All right, so this is going to be Unit 1.1, Examples 1 and 2. The first thing I want to discuss with you guys is this phrase, a numerical expression. So a numerical expression is a mathematical phrase that contains only numbers and mathematical operations. The key word here is expressions. Expressions do not have equal signs. And a numerical expression means that only numbers and math operations are involved, meaning that there's no variables involved. The other thing I want to point out to you guys here is the different ways that you can multiply. Now, typically in elementary schools and sometimes in middle school, multiplication can sometimes look like this, with a little multiplication symbol in the middle. But now that you're coming into Algebra 1, that is not really considered proper because that looks like an X or a variable. So instead, the ways that you are going to typically see it in this class looks like this, where you have parentheses around one number with no math operations between them. That indicates multiplication. So again, if you see parentheses with no plus or minus in between them, that means that it is multiplication. Or it looks like this with two sets of numbers with parentheses. I do want to note, though, that sometimes you might see it look like this, for example. This is 2 times -3. Some students see that minus sign and think that that means it's subtraction. But because that negative is inside the parentheses with the 3, that indicates that the negative belongs to 3 and it is not subtraction. The first thing I want to talk to you guys about now, or the second thing, is example 1. We're going to be discussing how to translate a verbal expression. And translate is really what we're doing. You have to be able to go back and forth between changing a verbal expression into numbers and then changing numbers into verbal expressions. So you're going to be going back and forth. For example, the biggest thing I want you guys to see is where it says 1 plus 8 divided by 3. Now, what does this mean when I say 1 plus 8 divided by 3? You're going to go ahead and start with the very first thing that it says, 1. That means that 1 needs to get written first. Plus is shown with the addition sign, 8, and then divided by means that whatever is after the divided by comes after the division sign. So to put it all together, the translation is 1 plus 8 divided by 3. Now, right now, there's no type of wording to indicate parentheses or anything. So when that's the case, you just write it straight across, left to right. So let's go ahead and practice this one. It says 7 first. So I'm going to write a 7 times 15. Now you have multiple ways to show the times. I'm not going to do the little X symbol, but you could do a dot, you could do parentheses. I'm going to go ahead and do parentheses. Parentheses 15. That indicates the times 15. Then it says minus 2. So I'm going to put a minus sign, subtraction, 2. And then it says times 9. So this is the minus 2. And then it says times 9. And again, you could go ahead and put parentheses. I'm going to go ahead and do the dot just to show you the two different ways to see it. But you could write it a couple different ways. I'm just giving you guys some variety. But again, what you're typically not going to see is like that. We don't like to do that because of this symbol here. Again, it looks like a variable. So when you're translating it into numbers, you just go left to right. Now, there are specific situations where that's not always the case. Let's go on to example 2. Example 2 would be that situation. And you're going to see the phrase of, the, and of. Now, I say them separately because the word sum here could be not sum. It could be the difference, the product, the quotient. Sum deals specifically with addition. Difference deals with subtraction. Product is multiplication, and quotient is division. So when you see the phrase of or the something of, that indicates parentheses here. And in that parentheses is the action that's happening afterwards. Sum gives me this plus sign, and then they tell me a 5 and 9. That's why they go into the parentheses together. Then that closes off the parentheses. Sometimes I tell my students that if they see this phrase, the something of, I tell them to actually physically draw parentheses so that way they could see that's how it should be written. Then at the outside, after that phrase, it says the next math operation word. The next math operation word is divided by. That indicates the parentheses is done, and we are now going to have it on the outside of the parentheses. And it says by 2. Yes, ma'am. Hello. Nope, all my kids are in different places. Sorry. I can tell you. Yes. Give me 1 second. Yeah, they're all in different places because of the testing. Hold on. It's you said Leidendorf? He's in Belmonte as well. Okay. All right, sure. Bye. Okay. Divided by 2 is now going to be on the outside because we ended it. So if I put it all together, it's going to look like this. 5 plus 9 divided by 2. And again, that's because that phrase, the sum of, the difference of, indicates these parentheses here. Let's go ahead and look at your practice page for this section, and let's go back and forth with the examples. So it says, write a numerical expression for each verbal expression. So we're going to start this direction. So it says 2 plus 12. So we're going to go ahead and do 2 first. 2 plus 12. That's my first math operation phase. Then it says divided by. Here's the second phrase. So divided by, and then it tells me 4. Now, we're not solving them right now. Right now, we're just practicing on just setting it up, but we're just going through the motions, and so you can see the different examples. Now, here's a situation where I told you that sometimes it indicates for you guys to switch things around, and that is the phrase more than and less than. I want you to write these down. This means we switch. So in this phrase, it says 18 more than 5. More than means that it's increased above 5. So we're going to start actually with this 5 here. And then we're going to put the more than. Now, more indicates plus and less than indicates subtraction. So if you want, you could go ahead and even put a plus and a minus sign next to the phrases so you understand which one is which. And then more than what? Or more than, or 5 more than, how much more? 18. So now the phrase is 5 plus 18. All right, let's take a look at number 3 here. It says 7 more than 3 times 11. So that phrase, we got that more than, that indicates addition, and that indicates we are switching things around. And it's addition to what? 3 times 11. So that means I'm going to do 3, and you could do it any of the ways that we talked about. I'm going to go like this with parentheses. And then after the more than, we're going to put plus 7. So this is now the phrase. Again, that is because that phrase more than switches it around. All right, let's go ahead and go down a little bit further. We're going to do one of these more difficult problems together. It says 116 divided by 4 plus 28 minus 33. So again, we're just going to go left to right. So it says 116 divided by, that's our first operation. So we're going to have 116 divided by what? 4. That's this phrase. Then we have the next operation, plus what? 28. That's this phrase. Last, it says minus. That is a subtraction sign. What? 33. Okay. Let's go ahead and go down to example 2. It says write a numerical expression for each verbal expression. Again, we're just doing the same kind of idea. Let's think about this. Now, this one is a little bit more difficult because it says the sum of, that means we are indicating parentheses. The sum of what? 3 and 7. So right here, that is going to be my parentheses. Now, there's multiple ways to write this out. For this first example in this section, I'm going to write it out one way, and then in number 12, I'm going to write it a different way. So for this way, it says the sum of. Sum means addition, so this is a plus. So I'm going to put parentheses, 3 plus 7, and I'm going to close the parentheses out. And then on the outside here, it says divided by 2. So divided by 2. Now over here, I'm going to do this slightly differently. It says the difference of. So that phrase, the something of, indicates what? Parentheses. The phrase difference means subtraction. We're going to be subtracting. And so I'm going to write this out a little bit differently. I want you to watch. So you can do grouping when it looks like this, but something you're going to hear me say a lot is that fractions is the same as division. Fractions are just division. Okay, so I'm going to turn this divided by, and I'm going to actually indicate this as a fraction. So my first grouping is going to be this, the difference of 6 and 2. So I'm going to do 6 minus 2. That's my parentheses. And now I'm going to do divided by, or a fraction bar, 4. And so again, you need to understand in this class that division is the same as fractions, and fractions are just division. In fact, this symbol here that you guys know as the division symbol is just a fraction bar. That is just a fraction bar. That's all that indicates. Okay, let's do one more. The sum of what? That indicates parentheses. 4 and 9. That means plus. The sum of 4 and 9, so I'm going to put parentheses here, 4 plus 9, and then times 3, that means multiplication on the outside. Now, do you see how there's parentheses? And I told you guys that when there's parentheses and you want to indicate multiplication, you don't actually need to put a symbol in between there. So I'm actually going to just put a 3 here. Now, you're going to learn later on that typically that 3 is going to be in the front, but for now, out of practice, we'll leave it there so we can practice order. But please understand that you're usually going to see it like this, 3, like that.